Imagine my surprise to come across a movie that had neither an antagonist nor a central conflict. It was a breath of fresh air. And that's today's topic. Let's talk about My Old Ass, the movie. My Old Ass is quite an awkward title for a movie, especially when someone wants to review it. But at this point, it just makes it part of the fun. So, when initially watched, it does tend to lose you when it comes to the plot. Because at first, it doesn't seem like it's going anywhere. I mean, for a while, it doesn't seem like it's going anywhere. Until the reveal at the end of the movie. Which then, I'm not going to say makes the rest of things make sense, but it pieces together the story that it wants to, or that it was intending to piece together, that we don't notice until then. I'll explain. We start the movie on our protagonist's 18th birthday. We are following a girl named Elliot, portrayed by Maisie Stella. Our movie begins with her shuffling through her day, gathering her two friends, Ro and Ruthie, and they are on their way to a campsite because they want to do shrooms for Elliot's 18th birthday. Well, during this time frame, her parents and family are trying to contact her to bring her home for a surprise family gathering because her youngest brother baked and designed a cake for her. But she ends up ignoring all of the phone calls throughout the night, which it doesn't end up to be a bad plot point. It's just an 18-year-old wanting to live their 18-year-old life on their birthday. Makes perfect sense. Well, the three of our trio gets together. They find their boat. They take their boat across the lake to their campsite. And that night, they take a bag of shrooms, boil it into some tea, and then they down it. Ruthie, or Ro with her trip is spending the entire night dancing. I imagine it's because she's tripping and imagining she is at a concert, because later on, Elliot does another tea shot of shrooms tea, and she ends up portraying herself in a Justin Bieber concert, and then they cut away from the trip to show that she's just doing the dancing, just like Rose doing at the beginning of the movie. So that's what I'm assuming. She's tripping at a concert. And Ruthie, if I'm not mistaken, I think she basically just turns into a giggler and kind of stoned. Because by the morning, she's conked out. No, that's Elliot's conked out on a log. The other two are perfectly fine by the morning. Not the point. Their trips don't mean anything. Elliot's trip, however, she starts getting annoyed because she doesn't feel like her trip is happening until she turns around to see Aubrey Plaza, who is, well, the 39-year-old version of Elliot. Apparently, the only way that they explain this is that Elliot doesn't do well with drugs. So what it is the young Elliot and the old Elliot get so stoned that they are able to physically and audibly communicate with one another. Basically, The Notebook, I guess that's the movie. The Notebook, the mailbox in the lake house. I don't know, I haven't seen the movie, so either way, the point is they don't know how to explain it, but they tend to get along. Young Elliot, after finally realizing what's going on during her trip, she starts asking questions to her older self, to which she gets virtually no answers because older Elliot doesn't understand what's going on, so she doesn't want to ruin anything or too much of her future, so you get the idea. She doesn't know how to balance it correctly. But after a while of conversations back and forth, young Elliot eventually convinces the older Elliot to tell her one thing that she wishes she would not do, so she ends up not doing it to make sure that she has a better future. And older Elliot is fighting it tooth and nail until she finally breaks down and hints at she just asks she asks her younger self to stay away from someone named Chad, which by the name, the obviously given name is the red herring to it, but his name and that warning gives you that immediate sense of, oh snap, the second we see Chad, we are supposed to be on Elliot's side and not Chad's. Which they portray, or they convey it pretty well. Until a few moments and a couple of days later, when Elliot is on a break from the cranberry farm and she goes for a dip in the lake, and she runs into Chad doing the exact same thing. Now, mind you, Chad, he is being played by Percy Hines White. And mind you, I've seen Percy Hines White in things here and there. I can't remember specifically off the top of my head, but I know I've seen his actor in some things before. But as soon as we're introduced to him, the first thought you have is, oh shit, here's our antagonist. Let's find out why we're going to hate him. But the thing is we're introduced to him in the lake, just being a timid young guy, sweet little dude. And as the movie progresses and Elliot is trying her damnedest to stay away from Chad, she is doing her damnedest to be mean to him, but it ends up being accidental mean flirting that, of course, progresses into what it does. Sorry, making room for the cat. Anyway, well, as time goes by and she ends up accidentally spending more and more time with him while still trying to fight it off, it comes to a point where older Elliot disappears from contact for a few days because apparently during the trip session or at the beginning of the movie when we first interact with her, she is able to put her future phone number into her modern phone number so they can text and call back one another. They never really explain that. They just explain they only say, I don't know how this works, and then run with it. Which, I'm not going to argue. I mean, we don't always need an explanation as to how situations like this work, especially when in the real life, if it happened, we would have no explanation for it. So I'm okay with that. But eventually it gets to the point where older Elliot stops answering, which, with the hints we get through the phone calls and the subtle hints dropped through the conversations, tuna and salmon don't exist anymore. No one says a lot of slang words and stuff like that. She's making it out like it's an apocalyptic future that she's going into, when it's really basically just a future version of what we currently have going on. Some fish are dead, some animals are dead, blah, 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 blah. It's like 21 years in the future, so no. 19 years in the future. Whatever, you get the point. Far enough for us not to see it ever, which is okay. Well, on the 4 days that older Elliot is missing, or not missing, but not communicating, young Elliot spends more time with Chad and ends up falling for him. Which, mind you, at this point, the entire movie, they have portrayed Elliot to be a staunch, hardcore lesbian. We even get scenes, I think it's like 3 or 4 scenes of her with her girlfriend, you know, actually doing things, making out, getting all handsy, fooling around, all that jazz. But I think the whole point of this part of the movie is we're young, stupid, and so sure of ourselves that we don't want to believe that we have room to grow. And I think that's the whole point of the whole lesbian Elliot not realizing she was not fully lesbian thing. But that's the way they did that was a little more, let's just say that it's easy to tell that a man wrote that part of the script. But anyway, I digress. Point is during those 4 days, they spend more time together, they get closer, and while out on the boat one day, the motor literally just drops while they're in the middle of a speed run over the lake, and so they get stuck in the boat and they have to row it to a dock. Well, while they're rowing, it starts to rain. They make it to the dock. They're spending time on the upper level of said dock, and eventually they break down, tell one another that they dig one another, and then they end up fooling around and banging on the dock, which we don't see the banging part. It's okay. They cut away from the overtly sexual activities, which is perfectly fine. I'm good with that because I'm a person who doesn't feel like there's an actual artistic need for nudity inside of a movie. At that point, it just becomes gratuitous for those who are writing it and for those who are going to see it. So, this movie itself gave us enough indications of the relationships to where they didn't have to cross that line. Perfectly good. Anyway, after the dock situation, Elliot makes her way home finally to bump into older Elliot, and they start talking back and forth, and eventually young Elliot admits that she not only has feelings for her, but has finally done stuff with Chad, which upsets older Elliot enough to where she sits on the ground and just laments as to why. And at this point, we're still spending the last hour trying to figure out why we were given a warning about Chad. Why was he going to be a bad guy? What does he do to turn into a bad guy? Which we never see. It is nothing but sweet old Chad for this guy. He never does anything to even hint that he's going to turn into a bad person. And that's the point. Because finally, after young Elle just drills into her that she doesn't understand why she was given the warning, older Elle finally admits to why. It's not because he grows up to be a bad guy, to treat her badly, and at first, for a while in that scene, it feels like she was going to say because he gets you pregnant and then leaves you kind of situation, because it's literally right after the dock sex scene. But no, it's none of those. He's not a bad guy at all. She's warning her younger self because she falls so hard for him, and their lives together are so happy that he eventually passes away when she's still young, and it breaks her. Because from then, she isn't able to find anyone nearly as good as Chad, and her life doesn't go the way that she expected. And to be honest, spending that entire hour trying to figure out why we were given that warning, where is our bad guy, what is our central conflict, and the only conflict was the conflict we were never shown. And they kind of hint at his death being soon, because while the two of them are having that conversation, and right after she brings up him dying, he shows back up in the scene bringing a scarf to young Elliot saying, "Hey, I'm sorry, I found this back on the road, but I think it was run over." And when I heard that, I was like, oh shit, this is his ghost now coming back to see her, because he's able to see and interact with older Elliot for some reason. So my thought was maybe that was his ghost, and they're able to communicate and touch one another because older spirit, maybe spirit of recently deceased, blah blah blah, you get the idea. But they never touch on it, because after older Elliot sees and realizes that young Elliot, after having this long monological tangent about how she's not going to stay away from him, she loves him, she wants to be with him, she wants to give everything she has to him for the short time frame she's going to have him. She doesn't let it detour her. She makes it her motivation to spend more time with him, to show him more love than he got in that first line. And older Elliot realizes this and decides to go, to leave the two of them be. And she gives Chad one last hug, which was the confusing part of that scene. Like, she gives him a nice long hug to remember what it was like. And then she goes off, and then young Elliot and Chad, they together go spend time with Elliot's family. That would have been a perfect ending right there. Which, I'm not saying this movie ended badly, because we still have like another 4 minutes or so. Because after this scene, we do a little cut into, not a time skip, but like maybe like a few weeks or a month or so past that, because originally this entire movie up to this point is all within a 28-day period, because Elliot's original goal was to move away from the cranberry farm that they lived on and worked at for her entire life, and she was going to move away for college, and blah blah blah. The cranberry farm was going to be sold after she left, that she didn't originally know about, blah. But after all of this happens, and she spends time with her family after getting warnings from older Elliot that she's missing so many things, and blah 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 blah. She wants to make sure that her relationship with her family is fixed, which she spends the movie doing. I kind of skipped over all of that because, well, I want you guys to see the movie. So, yeah. Anyway. But in these last 4 minutes, and we've got ourselves a little montage of her spending time with her family, her helping the family on the cranberry farm, her parents together, things like that. We see all of these things, her in the water with the cranberries, her on a tractor doing the plowing, all of this stuff. And throughout this montage, we don't see Chad. Like, Chad disappears after that last scene of the two Elliots and him. And I want to leave it open to interpretation. Maybe he's still around. She's just sticking around the cranberry farm to help. Or he did pass and she decided to stay with their family. It's not actually covered, but it ends with her spending time with family, spending her time helping with the cranberry farm that I'm guessing they don't actually end up selling. And it's just a nice, peaceful send-off. Nothing extra, no stretched out ending, no post-mid-credit scenes, nothing. Just a nice slice of life movie showing us that not every movie has to have an actual conflict, an actual antagonist. It can just be one singular person learning about themselves and then taking that lesson and growing from it. But this ended up being a bunch of lessons that she ended up growing from. And to be honest, like I said, I mean, it was a breath of fresh air. I mean, after you learn that the entire point of the warning was that she's going to lose him through death and not through anything bad. Well, relationship bad, let's put it that way. It's just, it puts everything else together, and when you think about it, it's actually done pretty well. I mean, it's not a format I've ever seen, because like I said in the beginning of this video, I'm 38, and in the 30 years that I've been watching movies, I'm under exaggerating that, I've been watching movies much longer than just the 30 out of the 38, but you get the point. I've never seen a movie that just didn't have an antagonist or a central conflict. It was just good guy, bad guy, problem solve. But there was no outer problem. It was just one girl learning about herself and then using those lessons to change. I mean, I don't know what kind of view or what kind of ratings this movie is going to get, but it should be pretty decent. It's not your typical everyday movie, and I think that's what works best for it. So, but hey, that's really all I've got about it, though. Have you seen My Old Ass? Not that. I'm talking about the movie. What did you guys think? Give me your honest thoughts in the comments below. Thank you for listening to my rant about the film. And like always, I'm going to spend time with my family. And I'll see you guys in the next video. Like, share, subscribe, ring the bell. Everything the bottom corners tell you to do. And I will see you guys next time. Bad News Harris. Out.